Well, good morning, everyone. It's Wednesday. I'm just going to jump right in. Let me read the verse for the day. It's in Hebrews, and it says, "Let us not give up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing." It's important to the Lord that we get together. And not just on Sunday. That's why we have small groups. That's why, we have what we call our church social, which is Together Tuesdays. And I hope you give that a try sometime. But we aren't meeting together on Sunday mornings any longer. And Pastor Rick, a week or two ago, had as part of his message the why we are not yet meeting as Saddleback Church. Now, we have an added problem in Laguna Woods, and that is the using of the clubhouses. So our opening might be even different from some of the rest of Saddleback. But this is the single most often question, not only of me, but of all our staff, that we're asked all the time. When are we going to get back together? And you know why? Because we want to. We all want to. Well, Rick addressed this, and he did such a great job that we decided that we're going to play that part of his message so that you can hear directly from him. And let me assure you, the ultimate reason is it's out of love for you, especially, well, on all our parts. So enjoy what Rick has to say this morning.
When are we going to be able to worship together again? This is just personal home folk stuff. Now, you have likely heard of smaller churches who had less than 100 people that have already started meeting together in their churches. Well, we're happy for them. We don't feel any competition. We're not jealous of that. We're glad we're on the same team. And any small church that is able to meet with less than 100 people, good for them. That's a good thing. You may also have heard recently about a couple of larger churches of 3,000, 4,000, maybe 5,000 people who are opening up outdoor services. Again, we're happy for them too. But Saddleback's a different animal. With over 30,000 attending on weekends and over 60,000 watching online every week now, Saddleback's in a category by itself. And I told you this the very first week, that we would likely be the last church to open, right along with stadium events and Disneyland, because there aren't many churches that have the crowds that Saddleback do in America. Now, people want to go, well, why aren't we doing outdoor services? Let me give you the reasons. We've thought all this through, and there's a biblical basis for everything we do. Let me give you the 10 reasons why we are waiting to reopen public worship. We're not in any hurry to reopen it right now. Why? Number one, nothing has changed since March. It's not any safer than it was in March. We're just more frustrated. We still don't have a cure. We still don't have a vaccine. It's not any safer. So what's changed? The only thing that's changed is that people are more impatient and they're frustrated. But it's not any safer than it was in March. Number two, we want to be fair and we don't want to frustrate people. Now, if in California you can have a group of up to 100 people, well, if you have 30,000 people coming on a weekend, what are we going to do with the other 29,900? What do we say to those people who would be turned away? It would frustrate people. Number three, this is a safety issue, why we're not doing it. It's not a First Amendment rights issue. You know, some churches, and I hear them loudly complaining that not being able to have worship services is government infringement and limiting the freedom of religion and the right to assemble. Well, they might have a discrimination case if everything else was open and only churches were closed. But every other large assembly is still closed, including theaters and concerts and even sports events, even ones that are outside in stadiums. We're not being discriminated against as a church. This is a health issue. It's a safety issue, not a First Amendment right issue. When they open up all those, and if they don't let us, now we start complaining. Number four, some churches are willing to gamble with the health and the safety of their members by opening before we have a vaccine. And that's their right. But I think they're being very unwise. And as your shepherd, your pastor, who loves you, and as someone who's commanded and called by God to protect this flock, I am not willing to gamble your life. I don't want to be a super spreader. I don't want you to be a super spreader. And in a church our size, contact tracing would be impossible. So it's a safety issue, and it's a love issue. We care about you. We're doing this to protect you. Number 5. This is a big one. I want you to hear it. Our church is far more than a worship service. We have 5 purposes in our church as a purpose-driven church. Worship is one of them, but we also have fellowship, discipleship, ministry, and outreach. It's incorrect to say that Saddleback has been closed during COVID-19. We're very, very open. The only thing that's closed is the weekend worship, and it's temporarily closed. Everything else we're doing ministry to literally hundreds of thousands of people. We're doing outreach, reaching 15, 16,000 people in total for Christ. We're doing discipleship and fellowship in our small groups. Even in our weekend worship, we're growing. Before COVID hit, we were averaging about 45,000 people in worship. But since we had to move to totally online service only, our worship attendance has more than doubled in the past 23 weeks. That's the greatest growth in the shortest time we've ever seen in 40 years of history of Saddleback Church. Number 7, we're winning more people to Christ right now than at any other time in our history. Number 8, our outreach strategy is the exact opposite of a lot of other churches. And most churches I know are always talking about how do you get the community back in the church. Saddleback took the exact opposite strategy. How do we get our church into the community? We went out and started over 400 of these pop-up food pantries before when the pandemic hit. We had 3 existing pantries before COVID, and we were feeding about 2,000 families a month. But when we launched the distribution in over 400 new locations in Southern California, we weren't focusing on getting the church back in, getting the people back into the building. We were focusing on getting the church out in the community. That's what Jesus said to do. Number 9, the Bible says that there's a time for every purpose under heaven. During this time, we want our members focusing on maturity in our small groups and ministry and mission in the community. If we can't meet together and worship, we can do what we're doing right now. You can invite family over, or small groups sit appropriately. We can do that. But when people express frustration to me that we haven't returned to large group worship, I always ask them the same 2 questions. First, are you active in a small group? And 2, are you serving in a ministry? You know what I found? That the loudest complainers are those who say no to both. The people who are meeting with their small group every week and the people who are serving in one of those 500 or so ministries are happy to wait until it's safer for all of us to meet together. That's loving your neighbors yourself. Finally, number 10, I want you to always remember that everything we do at Saddleback, we do out of love. We do it out of love, we do it out of faith. Love for God, love for people, faith in God, and faith in people. Because without faith, the Bible says it's impossible to please God. We are patiently trusting God. And while we are patiently trusting God and waiting for us to be able to return together in the fellowship we all want in worship, more people are coming to Christ than any other time in our history. You got to celebrate that. And through our services online and through one-on-one sharing of faith, now over 16,000 people together between those 2 have come to Christ in just 25 weeks. That, friends, is a miracle. That's nothing to complain about. That's God using normal, ordinary people in an extraordinary way. They continue to worship and they continue to serve.
Beautiful day, it's wonderful. This is the day.